He called himself a genius. The cops called him an idiot with a shovel. And yeah, they were both right, in a way. San Antonio, Texas, a city where the sun blazes, the tacos are legendary, and secrets simmer just beneath the surface. It's a place where military bases coexist with suburban tranquility and where appearances can be deceiving. In this city, Andreen McDonald was a shining star. A Jamaican-born entrepreneur, she built a successful assisted living business from the ground up. Her husband, Andreen McDonald, was a U.S. Air Force major, disciplined, respected, and seemingly devoted. But behind closed doors, their marriage was unraveling. Friends noticed the tension, the whispered arguments, the forced smiles. And then on February 28, 2019, Andreen vanished. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the community. Searches were organized, flyers distributed, and prayers offered. Yet as days turned into weeks, hope began to wane. The city watched, waited, and wondered. Where was Andreen? Andreen McDonald didn't just build a business, she built a legacy. Her company, Starlight Homes, provided care for elderly and disabled clients, and it wasn't some tiny side hustle. It was thriving. She managed employees, ran multiple homes, and still made time to be a mother, friend, and community member. The woman could juggle more responsibilities than most of us would dare. Those closest to her said she had a fire behind her smile. Not the dangerous kind, the determined kind. She had goals. She wanted her daughter to grow up seeing what strength looked like, what independence looked like, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even her husband, stand in the way of that vision. Andreen McDonald, on paper, looked like the American dream in uniform. U.S. Air Force major, stationed at Joint Base San Antonio, clean-cut, serious, and known for keeping his personal life very private. Too private, some would later say. At social gatherings, Andreen often seemed distant, reserved. Not exactly the life of the party, but never outright rude either. But those reserved smiles and nods were covering up cracks that had been growing for years. Behind the scenes, their marriage had gone from bad to worse. Andreen had confided in friends that Andreen was becoming increasingly controlling and paranoid. He would check her phone, question her schedule, even accuse her of cheating, without cause. Andreen, being who she was, didn't keep quiet about it. She told friends that things had gotten physical before. She made sure people knew. In fact, according to one witness, she said flat out, "If I ever go missing, check Andreen." Let that sink in. She was scared enough to leave that breadcrumb behind, just in case. And what about Andreen? He wasn't exactly winning any Husband of the Year awards in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Court documents later showed that their arguments were becoming louder and more frequent. They argued about money, about control, about her wanting to leave. And according to prosecutors, that's what ultimately pushed him over the edge. He couldn't handle the idea of her leaving, or worse, leaving with control of their finances and custody of their daughter. A man who was used to authority in uniform in the household now felt like his power was slipping, and he wasn't going to let that happen quietly. And then there's their daughter, a child caught in the middle of something no child should ever witness. Young, bright, and adored by her mother. She was there the night Andreen disappeared. She was in the house, too young to understand what happened, but old enough to remember her mother being there one day and gone the next. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was a collapse of a marriage, a home, a family. And that collapse would echo for years, all the way into a courtroom packed with people trying to understand how a man in uniform could be accused of killing the woman he once promised to love and protect. And if that wasn't enough, there was another twist. One so wild it almost felt fictional. Andreen's own father, Everton Beachy Stout McDonald, was awaiting trial in Jamaica for not one but 2 murders. His 2 wives, both found dead under suspicious circumstances years apart. And what do you know? Authorities said he paid hitmen to do it. Like father, like son. Suddenly, Andreen's case wasn't just tragic, it was eerily familiar. A pattern that stretched across borders, generational violence dressed up in suits and military ranks. And yet, Andreen saw it coming. She spoke her fear out loud. She didn't run. She stayed, tried to keep her family together, tried to build something real, and paid the price for it. On the night of February 28, 2019, the McDonald household reached a boiling point. Andreen had come home after spending part of the day managing her business. Andre was waiting, simmering. He suspected she was planning to cut him out of the company, the one that, to his ego, should have been under his control all along. What started as a typical marital argument quickly spiraled into a deadly confrontation. According to Andre's own testimony during the trial, the couple argued about finances and control of the business. He accused her of deception. She told him he didn't own anything, that she'd built the company herself. That was the spark. He claimed she hit him first. But what happened next was no accident. He shoved her hard. She fell. But that wasn't enough. He admitted that he stomped on her chest several times while she was on the ground. The injuries from that brutal assault ultimately killed her. Now let's pause right there. Because at this point, even if panic had set in, a rational person might have called 911, tried to save her, pleaded temporary insanity, something, anything, not Andre. Instead, he looked at her lifeless body and decided to go full horror movie. What followed next was chillingly methodical. He left the house, drove to a local store, and purchased an axe, then a shovel, then gas cans. Oh, and a heavy-duty construction mask. Because, body disposal gets messy. Surveillance footage caught him at the checkout. No emotion, no hesitation, just a man picking up supplies like he was prepping for a barbecue. Back at home, he wrapped Andreen's body in plastic and put her in the trunk of his car. He waited until nightfall and drove out to a remote piece of private land, the kind of place only someone local or someone military with maps and clearance might know about. Then, under the dark Texas sky, he tried to erase her. He dumped her body in a field littered with cow bones and wild brush, hoping time and weather would do the rest. He burned what he could. He scattered things. He didn't bury her deep, just deep enough to trick the coyotes and maybe the cops. But get this, he wasn't finished. He went home and started cleaning. Not with bleach, not with gloves, just basic scrubbing. The police would later find bloodstains anyway. He also burned some of her personal items in a fire pit in the backyard, wedding rings, documents, anything that might connect the two of them. Because nothing says innocence like setting your wife's belongings on fire the night she disappears. And then, he played dumb. He told police she went for a walk and never came back. He refused to cooperate. He clammed up, got a lawyer, and tried to move on with his life. Oh, and he went to the gym. Seriously. While the entire city was searching for Andreen, Andre was doing chest presses and deadlifts. He even showed up to work. Business as usual. But the cracks were starting to show. His daughter, the couple's young child, reportedly said disturbing things during the investigation. Something about mommy getting hurt, something about daddy being mad. She was in the house that night. She saw more than anyone realized. Investigators noted how Andre refused to help during the search efforts. He didn't put up flyers, he didn't post on social media. He just waited, cool, quiet, detached, the kind of calm that makes your skin crawl. For 4 months, Andreen's body remained hidden. Her family, especially her mother in Jamaica, held out hope. They organized searches, gave interviews, pleaded for answers. But deep down, they knew. And then, in July 2019, a breakthrough. A search team discovered human remains, burned, scattered, and decomposed on private ranch land about 6 miles from the McDonald home. The remains were surrounded by cow bones, which Andre apparently thought would confuse forensic experts. It didn't. The remains were later confirmed to be Andreen's. The cause of death, blunt force trauma, consistent with stomping. At that point, it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a case. A real one. And still, Andre wouldn't talk. He stayed silent. He said nothing. Until the trial years later when, for the first time, he confessed. Not to murder, no. He called it self-defense. He said he didn't mean to kill her, that it was a tragic accident, that he panicked, that he thought disposing of her body would be easier than calling the police. A man with a military career and years of discipline couldn't figure out how to dial 911. Right. Andre didn't just kill Andreen. He tried to erase her, tried to rewrite the story, and for a few months he almost got away with it. Almost. The morning after Andreen McDonald vanished, things already felt off, at least to the people who knew her best. When she didn't show up to work at her assisted living facility and didn't respond to texts or calls, her friends didn't buy the idea that she'd just stepped out. This wasn't a flaky person. This wasn't someone who ghosted her responsibilities. Andreen was the kind of person who would apologize for being 30 seconds late. So when she went radio silent, it raised every red flag possible. Carol Gonbar, a close friend and one of the first people to sound the alarm, went to the McDonald house. She walked in and knew instantly something was wrong. There was an odd chemical smell. A light switch in the bathroom was stained with what looked like blood. The garage was messed up. Andre, oddly calm, wasn't offering much help, so she called Andreen's mother, then the police. When detectives arrived, the clues were practically screaming. There was a receipt for a shovel and an axe, a torn-up note, bloodstains that had been scrubbed, but not well. In the backyard, there was a burn pile still smoldering, with ashes of what looked like personal items. If this was a missing person case, it was the worst disguise ever. But here's the twist. For all that mess, for all the shady behavior, the cops couldn't charge Andre with murder. Yet. Why? Because they didn't have a body. That's how the law works. No body, no murder. Just a suspicious husband, a house full of red flags, and a very concerned public. So instead they charged Andre with tampering with evidence, based on everything from the burn pile to the cleanup. He was arrested, booked, and quickly released on bond. Back in his home, back in his neighborhood. Yep, the man suspected of killing his wife was back on the streets less than a week later. Meanwhile, the search for Andreen intensified. Volunteers combed through brush, police brought in dogs, helicopters scanned rural areas near the McDonald home. Nothing. But while Andre stayed quiet, others were talking. A neighbor recalled hearing banging and screaming the night Andreen vanished. Employees at a local store turned over surveillance footage showing Andre purchasing tools that looked way too much like murder supplies. And forensic investigators were quietly building a case. Then came something strange. On March 1st, 2019, Andreen McDonald walked into the Baptist Neighborhood Hospital in San Antonio, appearing hurried and anxious. He asked the front desk staff if someone with the last name McDonald was being treated there. When informed that there was a patient by that name in room 3, Andre didn't proceed to the room. Instead, he stared down the hallway and abruptly said he needed to cut off the oven, leaving the hospital without further inquiry. This behavior struck the hospital staff as odd. Later, when deputies contacted the hospital, they confirmed that the patient was not Andreen McDonald. Andre's actions that day added another layer of suspicion to the unfolding investigation. That changed on July 11, 2019. Over 4 months after Andreen vanished, a rancher discovered something horrifying. A human skull on his property, partially buried near a pile of animal bones. Forensics confirmed the remains belonged to Andreen McDonald. Dental records sealed it. Police returned to Andre with new questions. He didn't answer them, but now they had what they needed: a body, a motive, and a web of lies held together with duct tape and bad decisions. Autopsy results were brutal. Andreen had suffered broken ribs and blunt force trauma consistent with being stomped. Burn marks showed an attempt to destroy her remains. What was left had been partially devoured by animals. Her final resting place wasn't a grave, it was a dump site. Investigators linked the location of her body with Andre's phone records. His cell pinged near that remote area the night she disappeared. He said he was just driving. Right, with a shovel, gasoline, and your dead wife in the trunk, it was over. Detectives formally charged him with murder. They issued a new warrant, and when they brought him in, he still said nothing. But the evidence was deafening. By the time Andreen McDonald walked into a courtroom in early 2023, 4 years had passed since the night Andreen disappeared. 4 years of silence, 4 years of legal tap dancing, 4 years of a community demanding justice. And finally, here he was. Dressed in a suit, flanked by attorneys, staring down a room full of people who once called him a friend, a husband, a father. Now, just a defendant with a disturbing past and a lot of explaining to do. The prosecution wasted no time painting the picture. They laid out the trail of receipts, the axe, the shovel, the gas cans, all bought in the hours after Andreen was killed. Surveillance footage showed Andre buying the items with all the urgency of a guy picking up a six-pack. Cold, methodical, no emotion. They presented the evidence from the home, Bloodstains, attempts at cleanup, and the fire pit where some of Andreen's belongings were burned like garbage. They brought in digital records, GPS data, phone logs, and expert testimony. Everything pointed in one direction. This wasn't a man in shock. This was a man covering up a crime. And then, in a twist straight out of a courtroom drama, Andre took the stand. He spoke. For the first time, the man accused of killing his wife told his side of the story.
As soon as she fell, it was like a reaction, so I landed like a couple of kicks.
More than a couple or a couple?
I'd say probably like about a couple.
And right at that moment, what happened?
So when she got the second kick, I think I heard like some type of wheezing, coming out of her. And then also, like in the background, I could hear like some footsteps running. And at that point I was like, oh shit, Elena. So I ran out of the bathroom towards the living room area, and then I saw like Elena, like she was somewhere close to the stairs, back at the front. So I ran towards Elena and picked her up, and we went upstairs, and then I was trying to get her back to bed.
Back in the bathroom, when this happened, how long did that confrontation, that violent confrontation, how long did it take?
That was definitely less than a minute. It couldn't be that long.
Were you the aggressor?
No, I was not.
What was going through your mind when you were there when that was happening?
So, when she was attacking me, I was basically just trying to defend myself. And I guess probably like a normal situation, you probably like, if someone's like a lot smaller than you, it's not a big deal, you probably just hold them. But since she's, she's bigger than I am, she's pretty strong, so trying to hold her, to restrain her or some shit like that, that's probably not feasible. So I just gave her a few kicks, like a couple of kicks, to like knock the wind out of her and get her to stop.
These kicks, are they wind up kicks of somebody, or are they all part of the movement of what's going on?
It's just like sort of like in the movement, because like when you flip, you got a leg behind you and you just whip it, and then you whip the next one.
When you get Elena, where do you take her?
I took her back upstairs to her bedroom.
And why?
Because I didn't want her around, any type of situation where, there was any type of family violence or stuff like that.
And when you get to her bedroom, what do you do?
So I was there trying to get her to go back to sleep. And then, at the time I'm thinking about like, okay, she probably just called the police and
Who?
Andreen.
When you go up to Elena, do you think that Andreen's okay?
No, I just thought, because I heard her wheezing, so at the time I just thought she got the wind knocked out of her. So she probably already caught her breath, probably called the police and made up some story.
Okay. You know how long it takes you to get Elena back to sleep?
I'm not sure the exact time, maybe 20, 30 minutes.
After you do that, what do you do?
So after Elena falls back to sleep, that's when I, go back downstairs and heading back to my room. And then when I, get inside the room, I notice Andreen is still lying in the floor right next to the door. So at that point, I sort of like, go over her and she's not moving. And then I bend over to like check, see.
You check?
Yes.
Tell me how.
So I bent over and then I like grabbed her face and then like feel like if I could feel like a pulse or something, and then I put my ear next to like her nose to see if she was breathing, and she was not.
What kind of reaction did that make you have?
So at that point, honestly, man, I became like pretty frantic at that point because, oh fucking shit, she's dead on the floor. We just had a fight. Obviously, I'm gonna get blamed for this, and I got a 7-year-old autistic kid upstairs that was gonna take care of her. So, it was a pretty scary situation.
You stayed right there at the doors of the bathroom and the master bedroom, or where did you go?
So at that point, I'm feeling like the house is like hot. So I went outside just to like get some fresh air and just to like, gather my thoughts and like think about like, what the hell is this going on? So I go outside and I'm, just out there like pacing around and thinking. And I think I actually like went through the gate and then I came back in to the house.
What did you do?
So when I got back in the house, I'm thinking, God damn it, I think I need to get her out of the house before, Elena wakes up and sees her in the house. And then, I don't know, man, at that point, I got this idea to just like get her out of the house. So I think I made like a text message or something like, where are you type deal. And then I went into the garage and I got two trash bags.
Describe yourself when you're doing it.
So, I mean, it's a scary situation. I ain't never been in anything like that before. I'm pretty nervous, I'm frantic, what the hell is going on type deal. And I'm just at that point moving like, basically like on instincts or something. But I go inside the garage and I grab like a couple of trash bags and then I put one over the top of her and then the other one under for the lower leg or something.
What's your purpose to doing it?
So at that point, for me, I was just trying to get her out of the house.
Why?
Because first, I didn't want Elena to see her. And then at that point, like I said, I'm thinking my life is over now. Obviously, I would get blamed for this. And then, she's gone. I'm probably going to go away. And then my daughter doesn't have any parents.
You said that you were going to get blamed for this. Did you think you were guilty of it?
No, I didn't think I was guilty. But knowing like the circumstance, there's obviously a dead person in your house, and you're the only adult there. And I know she's like, like issues before with the marriage where she's having an affair and stuff like that. So it just seemed like any run-of-the-mill police that, would be familiar with this situation. It just seemed like obvious, like, oh, obviously we know why you do this kind of deal. So I was just trying to escape the whole situation.
He said it was self-defense, that they fought, that she hit him first, that he lost control, that the stomping was reactionary, and disposing of her body, a moment of panic. That's right. After killing the woman he vowed to love and protect, he didn't call 911. He didn't try CPR. He bought gasoline and drove her into the hills, because apparently that's what panic looks like to a military-trained officer. To no one's surprise, the jury didn't buy all of it. But here's where it gets weird. After 6 days of testimony and 11 hours of deliberation, they didn't convict him of murder. Instead, they settled on manslaughter, not because he didn't kill her, but because the jury couldn't unanimously agree that it was premeditated. The courtroom didn't cheer. It didn't erupt. It just exhaled. Andre was sentenced to 20 years in prison for manslaughter, the maximum allowed, and 5 more years for tampering with evidence. 25 years total. No parole for at least half. A long time, but not a life sentence. Andreen's family sat in the gallery, silent, stoic. Her sister, Simone, delivered a gut-wrenching impact statement, asking the question on everyone's mind. Why didn't you just walk away? She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at the man who stole her sister's life and said, "You could have divorced her, but instead you erased her." And then came the most haunting moment. A statement read on behalf of Andreen's young daughter. The words were simple, but they cut like glass. She said she missed her mother's hugs, that she felt alone, that she wished her dad would have made a better choice. It was a courtroom full of grown men with law degrees, and still, no one was dry-eyed. But the legal battles didn't end there. In March 2024, Andreen's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Andre. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. And the jury agreed. They awarded the family $210 million in damages, one of the largest personal injury awards in Bexar County history. Andre's name was now forever tied not only to a manslaughter conviction, but to a financial judgment so massive it may as well have been engraved in stone. You're guilty, and we won't forget. The trial ended, the cameras shut off, but the questions didn't. Why did it take so long? Why wasn't it murder? And why did a man trained to protect his country end up killing the woman who built his home? Andreen McDonald's story is one that lingers, not just because of how brutally it ended, but because of how many warning signs were ignored or dismissed. A successful businesswoman, a mother, a friend, a daughter. She did everything she could to build a better life, and when she sensed danger, she didn't stay silent. She told people. She laid the groundwork to be found. But still, it wasn't enough. Her husband, a man trained in leadership, in responsibility, in protection, turned into the threat. And he didn't just kill her, he tried to erase her, to burn away a legacy, to bury a woman whose only real offense was refusing to be controlled. And yet the system, as it so often does, fell short of what many would call true justice. The manslaughter conviction stung. To some, it felt like calling a fire a warm breeze. But her family stood tall. They spoke with strength. They showed the world that even in the face of profound betrayal, you don't flinch. You fight. And that civil trial, that $210 million judgment, it may never be paid, but it said what needed to be said. We believe her. We won't forget her. And what about their daughter? The little girl left behind in the wreckage of all this? She said it best in the courtroom, with the kind of raw honesty that only children have. You killed my mother. You took away my life. It's the kind of line that doesn't fade when the headlines do. It's the kind that echoes. If this story shocked you, it should. Because this wasn't a crime of passion. This was a calculated erasure of a woman who dared to be independent. It happened in a quiet neighborhood. In a professional household, behind the kind of closed doors people assume are safe. But evil doesn't wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a uniform. So if you're watching this, ask yourself, would you have seen the signs? Would you have spoken up? Would someone have believed you? This is more than true crime. It's a mirror. It's a warning. And if you want more stories that refuse to look away, stories of survival, betrayal, and brutal truths, then hit that subscribe button. Follow, share, remember, because Andreen deserved better. And there are more stories like hers waiting to be told.